Hi, I'm Lisa Entwistle, founder of Wealthy Living and host of Wealthy Living Radio Show. I help open-minded, big-hearted people connect to themselves, to others, and the world around them, guiding them to live a wealthy life, both personally and professionally. On this show, I have conversations with a variety of different professionals to discuss topics that cover our physical, our emotional, and our spiritual wellness. We discuss how our choices impact our work, our relationships, and our health, and together we suggest ways to help you live a wealthy life. So the topic for today's episode is embracing transitions for girls and women and how that has an impact on their well-being. So to do this, I have a special guest with me today, Melissa Jeffcott. Melissa is a certified life coach who supports girls and women as they journey through life transitions, encouraging them to bring more self-care and well-being into their lives. She facilitates both women's and girls' circles. She runs workshops as well as doing one-on-one coaching sessions. So welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So I thought maybe we could start by just telling the listeners what we mean by major transitions in a woman's life.
Mm-hmm. Yep, sure. So obviously we have birth, and then we move through, when we're looking at sort of the stages of girls and women's transitions, we look at the next one being when they reach their first period, which is menarche. So that's a real transition point for girls. The next main one would normally be if they choose to have children, so birth, becoming a mother. And then as they move through life, traditionally, in the olden days, you would have just said to become like an older woman or the crone, but now there's this new one as well called Marga. So Marga woman is a woman who's moving more out of her motherhood role and into her into that sort of wisdom. So around the age of sort of 45 to 55. So when you sort of hit menopause, would be the next one.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm sure that, like going through these different transitions would present a whole lot of different challenges, some of them exciting and some of them nerve-wracking, and a whole lot of moods and a whole lot of changes that affect the family, that affect their friendships, affect their schoolwork, their work environments. And I'm sure the impact of all these different transitions can really impact a girl's and a woman's life, and then also have the impact on their overall well-being.
Absolutely. I mean, transition can be messy. Transition is transformative, so it's not always going to be a really pleasant experience. It can be painful. It can be you can feel very unsupported. But I guess what I like to look at is how can we bring in sort of a way of a ritual or a routine or some sort of care around those points of those milestones that we have as women that can help women and girls to feel supported, to feel like their own self-confidence and self-worth is enhanced through making these transitional points, marking them and honouring them as women as well.
Yes, so basically what I'm hearing is that it's really good to work out a way to feel supported as you navigate these transitions so that they do end up in positive transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, in past and in other cultures, that's how it's always been. There's been a village of women. The elders look after the young women. They bring them through. They sit in circle. And in our Western culture, we've lost that, through being quite disconnected. Often our own mothers and families are spread throughout the world. We don't often have that support nearby when we have our own children. So we can feel really disconnected and really unsupported through challenges in life. And it starts from, teenage girls. We see this with, teenage girls today having, feeling quite anxious, a lot of anxiety, a lot of, issues going on there, to women becoming mothers and feeling, quite unsupported and stressed out, and then hitting menopause as well is a whole other minefield for women as well.
Yeah, massive. I mean, anxiety is a huge mental health issue in the modern, or especially the westernized world. And, it ranges from all the different ages. And as you said, we're seeing so many tween and teen girls and boys, but, really becoming a lot more anxious.
Yeah, absolutely. And feeling, even though we're so connected as a world with, online and social media, that never-ending connection for those kids too also helps them to feel disconnected from people in real life and feel, there's all the bullying and everything that goes on as well. So any tools I think we can give our, we're talking about girls here, boys and girls, but we're talking about girls, any tools we can give them or any ways to show them how to empower themselves to start practicing good self-care, to develop their own self-worth, self-confidence, to navigate modern life, I think is a
and really connect to themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Really connecting to themselves is important.
So this is an amazing, really interesting area. I mean, for me, I, have done loads of work in the past with mothers and starting out more in the sort of fitness area and the functional fitness area, and then more into the health and well-being of mothers and how they transition that, and also then becoming role models for their daughters. And I really love this work, and I really love this whole idea of really marking the different transitions in a woman's life. But how did you get to the point of working with this, with both ends of womanhood, I suppose?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll start with the start, with the girls. Well, for me, I've got an older son, but I've also got two girls in the teen space. I lost my own mum when I was only 16, so I grew up without that real feminine, strong role model in my life, and I've made a conscious choice for my own daughters that I wanted to be what I wanted them to be. So I wanted them to grow up feeling really empowered and confident in themselves. And how I got started in this area is I became a facilitator for a workshop called A Celebration Day for Girls, which is a mother-daughter workshop for tween girls for that sort of 10 to 12-year-old bracket, and it's all about positive menstrual education, but it's bringing girls into that shared storytelling, into circle, feeling connected with women, hearing the stories of other women, hearing the stories of their own mother, their first experience with periods as well. And that's what we resonate with as people. We love hearing other people's stories. It helps us to feel connected to people. So when you bring in the art of storytelling and people tell stories, it helps us feel less alone. And we know that's true when it comes to becoming a mother for the first time. When you hear other stories about, the difficulties of breastfeeding or whatever, it helps you to feel less alone. So likewise for all these transitions, menopause is another one. There's not a lot out there, but I think that's changing as well in terms of, hearing other women's stories and feeling that support really helps you to navigate your own journey through it as well.
Yeah, so really taking out the taboo, which it might have been in the past, to talk about some of these things that are happening in a girl's and a woman's life. Yeah. And they're happening for pretty much every girl and woman. I mean, not every woman decides to become a mother. No. But generally, unless there's some medical issue, every girl is going to start menstruating. Yeah. And then at some point in their life, they're going to stop menstruating.
Yeah, and it's a lot. One of the activities I do with the girls is we work out how many periods you're likely to have in your lifetime based on how many children you think you will or won't have. And in a rough, and then you get the mothers to guess, and they're usually way off. And usually it's around that 400 mark. You'll have 400 menstrual cycles in your life. So, that's massive. And yet we don't talk about it very much. Or when our girls get their period, we give them a bit of the basic, stuff, and here's the materials you need, and this is what you do, and then that's kind of it. This is something you just have to deal with. So, I guess making it more a celebration point, a point to really, honour that next phase of life, and to do some sort of ritual around that can be really a beautiful thing. Now, that's not to say that every girl is going to want a big hullabaloo and a moontime party or anything like that, because that's not the case. But there are things that you can do to honour that transition in a really beautiful and gentle way that helps your daughter feel empowered as well.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And I think what's really important is, like you said, not everyone's going to want this so-called big moontime celebration. And I think that there is probably a much smaller collection of say, mothers or women or daughters that really embrace that whole world of moon time and are a lot, I suppose, live generally in a much more conscious type community. But for the mainstream, which is I know a lot of your work, which is why it's so powerful and beautiful, because you're bringing all this work into the mainstream. And that middle ground between people that would not have ever thought of this sort of stuff and not really the highly spiritual, conscious earth mamas, And so how do you get those people involved? Like what's something, I mean, for listeners today, say they've got daughters and this is just not stuff, I mean, they grew up with menstruating being a taboo subject. And even if it's not a taboo subject in their house, it still feels maybe a little bit weird to be making a deal of it. It's celebrating it in a way. So how do we change that mindset so that it does become more of a celebration and less of a frustration, or a pain? Because, I mean, really, the practical parts of it can be really annoying for girls.
Oh, absolutely. And it's no point pretending that it's not, because it is. So I think you take a step back, and it's even before your daughter gets her first period, is if you're menstruating yourself and if you've got a cycle, modelling good practice for yourself. So looking after yourself and your self-care. So I know for me, when I track my cycle, so I know on an app, so I know, in those days leading up, it's time for me to start slowing down and looking after myself better. So I will prioritise some self-care there. So I'll say, look, I'm going to go and have a bath now, or I'm just going to lie down for half an hour, like modelling to my family that this is what I need for myself to make me feel good and feel supported, or, getting someone to cook the meal that night or something like that. So just bringing those moments of self-care into your life.
And but when you do that and you're modelling it, do you just say, I'm feeling like I need some self-care time, and I'm going to have a bath, or I really feel like I'd love someone else to cook the meal tonight, or do you relate it to your menstrual cycle?
So I will say, look, I've got my period now, I'm just going to go and have a rest, and I'll say that to anyone in my house. That's fine, and that, and
so you relate it to the cycle.
So I do relate it to the cycle, and I think it's important for us to talk like that. I mean, I've got a son who doesn't want to hear the word, teenage son doesn't want to hear the word period at all, but it's important for him to know, when if he chooses to have a partner or a girlfriend or whatever, then he also knows to help look after them. So I think that's, so it's really important to definitely, talk about stuff out loud, just normalise everything is a big key part. For when your daughter actually gets her, I mean, I do run the workshops where it's really lovely to give knowledge, like knowledge is power. So giving girls before they get their first period, lots of knowledge about what's coming, of course. But then, so for example, when my teenage girl had her first period, which she came and told me, and we spent that evening together creating a self-care box for her. So, it was really lovely. So just getting a little box together, putting all beautiful products and bath salts, a nice heat bag. I mean, obviously I'd collected a few things, so
that's a great
I knew it was
idea.
coming. It was a really lovely thing to do together, and just showing her that these are the sorts of things you can do. A journal is really nice because girls get hormonal and, they want, so she likes to write. So a nice journal, I put some nice rose tea bags in there, all beautiful things that she can go to when she's starting to feel that, so she's starting to take notice of her body. I'm feeling a bit hormonal. Maybe it's time for me to do something nice for myself. So she can go to her self-care box and get her, her face mist or whatever it is, or her bath salts, and go and take a bath. And I think that was a really beautiful way for us to connect. I mean, we did a box as well with pads, and we use the period undies, which I think are great for teenage girls, and so the practical stuff as well, of course. But equally as important in my mind was creating this box that was for self-care. So
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it on so many levels. I love it because yes, you've got the practical box, which is necessary, but I love that the let's call it the non-practical box. Or the self-care box was grounded. It's not like, when you talk about, I think when people hear celebrating the change for a girl's life and celebrating their first periods and celebrating their cycle and all of that, I think for a lot of people, and perhaps for people listening today even, they go from the practical way of people doing it to the ultra spiritual, earthy, like, collect your blood in a cup and put it by the tree, which is great as well if that's what resonates, but they go from that and the idea of that middle ground, because that self-care is just beautiful and it's I just wouldn't have even thought of that.
Yeah.
But it's such a grounded and way that someone who is not into the more spiritual way can really connect and still acknowledge and provide an actual tool for them to use.
Oh, absolutely. And what a gift to be given as a, 13-year-old, like to be shown that it's important to look after yourself, to recognize when you need, when you're feeling, because, I can say, oh, you need a bath or you need to calm down or whatever.
Yeah.
But for her to start to recognize the changes in her body, the hormonal moods, and to go, okay, this is something that I can do for myself to calm myself down or to look after myself. I've had a rough day. These are the tools. I know I've got a box full of tools I can go to. For her, it might be a favorite book as well. It might be a Harry Potter book. It could be anything special. It's, I don't advocate putting chocolate in the room. That would get eaten. But there's just anything that would get eaten way before the month cycle. Yeah, that wouldn't work. Yeah, the tea was as far as I went with that. But yeah, it was really lovely to create and a really special thing. And the other thing I did alongside of that was I asked some women in my life, relatives and close women friends of mine, to write just a little short note to her. Not necessarily around getting your period, but just a couple of words of wisdom or something that they might like to share with her that I could collate for her and give to her as a gift, and to just show there are women, not just me, but there is a sisterhood of older women that are here to support you, because we don't always want to talk to mum, like mum sometimes doesn't, isn't the person we want to go to. So for her to know as a young girl that she can go to an aunt or one of a family friend, and they've got her back. And if she needs to talk to them about something she doesn't feel comfortable talking to me about, then that's there for her as well. So again, it's another tool for her to use if she needs it.
Yeah, that's brilliant, because I know that I did a rite of passage for my daughter when she was 12, but that was connected to also the fact that I've got a Jewish background, so it was like a bat mitzvah, but in kind of my way, where we did do sort of a 3-generation women's circle where that sort of information was shared, some wisdom shared down of what you'd tell your 12-year-old self today.
Yeah,
but it wasn't necessarily a mark of a menstruation. It was just that 12 was picked because that's what we've done ritually as a practice. But I love the idea of even just having letters, because not everybody is up for a circle.
Absolutely. And in fact, I would say most girls don't want that. And my daughter, I would have loved to have created something like that you created for her, like a circle of women. But she doesn't want the attention on her like that. Yeah. That's not her. And I totally respect that. But for me, I wanted to do something. So being able to get people to write, and then she can keep those letters and read through them. And some are funny, some are, more heartfelt, but it's just a beautiful gift to have, to know, these women are there for me, and I have that. It's just that added layer of support I was saying for a girl as they move through life, to know that they've got that is really important.
Amazing. And I want to come back to when we I just want to see how you got to those other parts in your life. Working with the other one, but I want to come back also to that, to look at later on, like, what do you think the effects are of doing this sort of work where a woman or a girl at, anywhere between the ages of sort of nowadays 11 and 14 or 15, where they're knowing they've got support, what effect do you reckon that has at the other end? So before we do that, let's go through the stages and the major transitions and how you sort of came to working in those different transitions. So I understand now with the daughter, and that's brilliant, and I love the tools that you've shared on that.
Yep. Well, I guess I don't work with women in the birth space. There's a lot of women who do that, but
But transition into motherhood?
Transition into motherhood, definitely. And then I guess where I started getting into coaching and women in their 40s in particular, I saw 40 as it's a transition point as well. I think for a lot of women, it's not like menopause, which comes later, but it's certainly still, I see it as a transition point.
Huge transition
for many women. So, and it was for me as well. So really my journey started when I turned 40, and I felt very disconnected from my sense of self. I was very firmly in my mother role with 3 young kids. My husband was chasing his passion and retraining and studying and doing everything. I'd given up my studies. I was studying a master's in psychology, so I had stopped working. I felt lost. I felt like I had lost who I was. And I realised that actually a lot of women feel that way. And they really don't know where to start. They've been putting themselves at the bottom of the pile for so long. So it's really hard to work out, who am I, what do I love to do, and where do I get to? So I saw that there was an opportunity. I retrained and became a life coach, but it really just started with me following the breadcrumbs of curiosity, really. I realised I love to write, and I'd let that go. So I started writing, started a blog that turned into going to a weekend workshop where I saw all these women doing amazing things. I realised there's actually such an opportunity for women as you get older now with the online world, and to actually retrain and create your own thing as well, which is really exciting. So I decided to become a life coach, trained in that, and then started to work with women in their 40s who's typically their kids are getting a little bit older, so they're starting to think, I've got a little bit more space for myself to start to think, what is it that I want for myself? So not specifically around transition, in terms of a cycle, but it's certainly a point to start to look back to yourself, to the essence of who you are, and start to do some discovery around
kind of like
that.
a midlife transition.
Kind of like a midlife, much prefer midlife transition to midlife crisis. And I think midlife is actually a really exciting time, so I do like to reclaim that word from the crisis, because I think midlife does have a sort of a lot of bad press. It seems we get older, we have all different these issues that happen, but in fact it can be a really great time to really step into who you are more, and to start to rediscover some of those parts of yourself that you may have lost along the way. Yeah,
like really reclaiming yourself and becoming so much more self-aware. I know for myself, 40 was huge for me, because I'd recently, like it was 2 years after I'd separated from my ex-husband, and I was moving forward into a new partnership, and I was feeling really actually quite empowered at that time, probably more so than I had for years, especially because the years prior to that I had small kids.
Yeah.
And so, not that they were so old by then, one of them was still 4, but, I'd really started to really feel my own power back and really connect more with myself. So from then on, I think my journey between then and the last 5 years has really been that self-empowerment and really connecting back to me.
Yeah. And it can be such an exciting time. Like it's a choice. We have a choice,
yes.
Then I think that's what some people kind of forget. We all can get very stuck in it. Everyone's busy. We've all got lots going on. But making that conscious choice that you want to, find those things that light you up, reconnect back into that sort of power and that the passion that you have for life, finding the fun and the joy.
Yes.
It can be done.
Fit, fun and fabulous.
Why not? Yeah. And it's just starting to, it's baby steps. It's just starting to make a couple of different choices than what you're making now. And that starts to lead you on a path. And that is exactly what I did. So I just started working, down the path, finding those little things that I was interested in, that I wanted to look into more. And that just led me to each step that's unfolded along the way. So to the point where I'm really, the older I get, I'm 40, nearly 48 now, my 40s have been amazing, but I'm actually seeing as I get older, I'm even more excited, which sounds crazy, apart from the grey hair and the wrinkles, I'm actually more excited to keep getting older because I'm stepping more into my power as I do it.
Yeah.
And the other beautiful thing about getting older is you don't worry so much about what other people think about you, and that's a huge relief as well, to not worry so much about what people are thinking, whether they're judging you or whatever it is. It's a real freedom to let a lot of that baggage go, because we, as women, we often carry that around with us for a long time.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's really important to actually bring up and talk a little bit about this transition into motherhood as well. Before, I know we've just sort of skipped that a little bit and talked more about like when the kids are that bit older. I think a lot of women really do struggle with that transition from going from independent woman to mother, because you're still a woman, but you're not necessarily the same independent woman that you were. And yes, your independence comes back, but there is even when it does come back, you've got a whole lot of codependence on you. So there's a big mindset change with that. And I think a lot of women, especially like with their career, having to often be put on hold, even if some of it for a short period of time, some people for a long period of time, depending on the individual circumstance. But I feel like there's a lot of negative talk about the things that women have to give up when they transition into motherhood. Now, I understand that women also go, yes, and I'm not saying that I don't love my child and my child's fantastic and all these things, but God, I've had to do this and then I do this, and all of these quite negative, and they're real as well. I'm not saying that that's not a reality. But on the flip side, going from what you were just talking about, that really making choices now, I think in a way it gives women an opportunity to actually stop everything that they were doing before motherhood and reevaluate.
Yeah, any transition point should be, you should, create some space to evaluate where your life's at and see, are there any changes you want to make? For sure. It's really important to do that for our lives, because we can go our whole lives, and you see people who go their whole lives and never stop. And they've never taken that time to reevaluate, and they end up really bitter and unhappy and feel like, life's just passed them by. So I think, it's a really good opportunity. So becoming a mother, for me was a really good opportunity I embraced motherhood, but I also let go of some of the things. I couldn't control everything. And I think for a lot of women who are used to, controlling everything in their life, what they eat, everything they do, to suddenly not have control over everything is really difficult.
That's probably the biggest thing with the transition, I'd say, is that uncertainty.
Absolutely.
You just cannot control.
Yeah.
And you have to embrace uncertainty.
Absolutely. So I have 2 invisible tattoos on each of my wrists. I have trust and surrender. And I just, I don't actually have them, but I do, because they keep me grounded, because I trust, I trust that things will work out as they are supposed to, but I also surrender to the things that I can't alter or I can't affect. You can't control everything. So letting go of that. And I think as a mother of young children, something I was pretty good at was not sweating too much of the small stuff. So if the kitchen was dirty and messy and someone came over for a cup of tea, it didn't kill me. I wouldn't get too stressed out about it. Whereas for some people, they do still want to have the control over everything. And it can be really, it's exhausting. It just is exhausting.
So do you think that, going back to that, because that's one of the challenges, I suppose, with that particular transition.
Yeah.
So like we talked about with the younger girls, the thing that helped them maybe with this transition is knowing that they were supported.
Yeah.
And just having that support, whether it be from the mother or from the extended sisterhood, and feeling supported. Actually, would you say it's that same thing that needs to happen?
And also
in this transition?
Asking for help. I think we don't often want to ask for help. We want to wait till someone magically sees that we need it and just offer it. And often sometimes that happens, great, but often you need to say, look, I'm struggling, or I really want to get to my exercise class. Can you look after my kids for a couple of hours, and then I'll do the same for you next week. So making those connections in your local community, because often we don't have our parents around, a lot of people don't, so we don't have that extended family to support us. So absolutely finding those people who you can, count on, whether it's through your kinder or your school or whatever, those mums that you can also do the same for them, and you can act as your support system. So you have time for yourself, for your own self-care, for your own well-being, and, same at night, taking that time for yourself and things like that.
So with I 100% agree with you, to have that community support, to have a group of other mothers or other women or even just people or family members that can support you in those times, and you help them and they help you, and it's that sort of community spirit. That's all ideal. But not everybody, especially in the world that we live in today, which is quite individualistic, and quite, in a way, disconnected, in person disconnected anyway. How do you have the confidence and the courage to action community support?
Yeah, I think you're right. You bring up a good point, and it's hard to take that first step with some mum you might see, at the school gate or something like that. But if it's something you feel you want to call in, and you know as a person whether or not that's something you feel like you want. For some people, being in an online Facebook group or something where they feel like they get a lot of support from. For some women, that really is a massive support, and it can work really well. But for, if it's something you feel like you need.
It doesn't get your shopping done for you,
doesn't get your shopping done for you. And look, it does get easier as your children get older. I'm under no illusions. I've been through it with 3 young children. It's tough. I'm not saying it's not. And I didn't have it all sorted out when I had little kids either. But, I've found it certainly got easier as they've got older. And I also have always felt okay asking for help, but I've also been okay with if I get a no, or I try not to take it too personally. Everyone's busy, it's something that it takes a bit of you do have to put yourself out there.
And it's practice. It's practice at getting support, and also working out what support you need. Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people, including I've seen from young kids to older people. It's not really being connected to what their needs are. Yeah. And often behaviour becomes bad in children when their needs aren't met. Often in adults, behaviour is not very good when their needs aren't met. Most of the time we see bad behaviour, it's because people feel that their needs aren't met. Yeah. But they weren't sure what their needs were to begin with, because they hadn't really taken that time to stop, pause, reflect, and acknowledge what their needs are, so that they can then get the support that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. That is exactly right. You do need to create some space, whether it's just half an hour you can get to the park or something like that, where you can just breathe and check in with yourself. What is it that I really need? What am I craving? Is it alone time? Is it connection with other people? Do I just need half an hour to have a bath or something like that? Like, what is it that I feel would serve me, and, how can I make it happen? How can I ask for that to happen?
Yeah, because you make a good point before when you said that, because you're obviously quite practiced at this now, at, getting support when you need it and asking for it. And so then you don't feel necessarily triggered when somebody says no. But I know in the past with me, and sometimes still now, for whatever reasons, I do a lot for myself, and do things without asking for help. Yeah. But then I get to points where I feel like I'm in crisis and I need the help. Yeah. And when you ask for help when you're in crisis, because you have to ask for help, and you get a no, you feel so rejected and so frustrated and almost angry at the person for saying no. Like, you can't, like, it's hard, so much harder to accept the no with grace when you've got to that point of crisis or desperation, because you don't know what you're going to do. Otherwise, you're feeling completely disempowered if you get a no. Yeah.
So I guess the way I look at it is, I don't know what's going on in their lives. I'm assuming that they're, that they've got obviously something going on that's making them say, no, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Like, the problem is we live in this world of Facebook and Instagram where we see the bright, shiny side of people all the time, and we kind of forget that everyone's got their own shit going down.
Yeah.
So I kind of come back to that, and I trust that the help I need will come from somewhere else.
That's right. And it's also about, we talked about, really just working out what your needs are before you get to that crisis point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what about the next transition? So you talked about this new phase, which you sort of mentioned before, which was MAGA. MAGA, yeah. So that's between, like, what age you're looking at when you talk
that's
about that?
I think that's roughly around probably around 45 to 55, so around that sort of perimenopausal, menopausal time for a woman. So, you're not in your old age or your, the wise old crone probably people have heard of before. But this MAGA energy is more of a time to step more fully into your wisdom as a woman, and to really trust in yourself and your the gifts that you have to show other younger women that as well, to maybe act as a mentor or something like that, but also standing more fully in your self-belief and self-power. And I think that can be very scary thing, but also very exciting time of life if you choose to make it so. So again, it's about acknowledging the changes of life that happen as you enter this new phase, which is can be incredibly difficult for a lot of women.
So is that generally the
perimenopausal and menopause phase? And there are a lot of hormonal issues, of course, that people have to deal with. For some women not, but for a lot of women, particularly in the West, we do seem to go through a lot of issues with all of that. So there's a lot of, health things to, navigate as well. But I guess from where I sit, from my area that I'm interested in, and it's, again, how can I support myself? How can I feel connected to other women, have that sisterhood around me, and self-care and looking after my own sort of well-being as I transition this next phase of life. Yeah.
And I think that what we're probably seeing happening, and I don't know if there's stats on this or if there's case studies being done, but this whole idea of women in their perimenopausal phase, a lot of those women, especially at the beginning of that phase, would have young children, because women are having children later and later now. Not all women, but a lot. A lot of women are having sometimes their first child at 40. And so they've got really young children, or even if they're having their children in their late 30s, and they have a daughter, and that daughter's getting her first period.
Absolutely.
At the same time you're losing your period.
Yeah, and you're right. And that's probably something that hasn't happened in society ever before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very new period of time, and that is what's happening. We're having our children later, so we are going through these hormonal changes in a household often.
And that's when the husband runs.
Indeed. Runs to the store for chocolate.
Yeah.
And so again, coming back to that, modelling good self-care for yourself at this time of your life as well is really imperative, to also show your daughter this is an important thing for you too, because we do struggle through this period of time as well. So making sure you have things for yourself. But I guess also what I saw with a friend recently when she turned 50 was creating, again, like similar to the marking of the first period, is creating a wisdom circle for her and bringing together a group of women to sit together in circle and share the things that they had garnered from the wisdom of the woman who turned 50, allowing her to share some of her stories as well, and having a beautiful, lovely dinner afterwards with lots of laughter and fun. But it was a really special way to mark that. And she felt afterwards, I know we talked about it, that it was a real opportunity for her to step more fully a little bit away from her mother role, because her children were a bit older, and more into her own power and what she can now contribute and do. And we live in a time where that's really possible at the age of 50 and beyond to keep doing amazing stuff in the world.
It sure is. I mean, what 50 used to be and what 50 is now is so different, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's really quite. I think it can be really exciting. I think it's just a really, it can just be a time where you really do shed all the baggage that you've carried for a long time. You have to do the work. I'm not saying it just magically happens and you click your fingers, but you can shed all the drama and kind of just go, this is who I am, this is what I want to achieve. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a career or a job. It can be in, it can be anything. What is your passion? What do you love to do? It might be that when you're a kid, you love to paint and you start to paint again. It could be, something as simple as reconnecting to a hobby or traveling more or whatever it is. It's finding those things that maybe you used to love doing when you're in your early 20s before, and reconnecting back to some of those things.
Totally. And I think that if you were to ask most people, they may not come up with this answer straight away, but with a bit of digging, most people, the one thing that they really desire is a sense of freedom and fulfillment.
Yeah. We all want to feel like our lives have meaning in some
meaning
way.
And free.
Yeah.
Yeah. And free looks very different to all different people, but I think that more so than in any other generation so far, as older women now or middle-aged women.
Midlife.
Middle-aged sounds so... Anyway.
Yeah.
Middle-aged women, we are given more opportunities than any other generation before us as a middle-aged woman.
Yes.
And it's really exciting to be able to embrace that freedom that a middle-aged woman has now than the lack of freedom almost that they used to have.
Yeah, absolutely. If we're looking at the Western woman, now is the time where we can, in our 40s and 50s and beyond, we can travel by ourselves or with our friends. We can do, we can change careers if we want to. We can start our own thing.
We can have a career.
We can have a career. Exactly. We don't have to sit at home.
And our own business.
Yeah, our own business. It's a really exciting time of life and I'm seeing a lot of women leaving their corporate careers and starting up their own, whether it's consulting or a complete change of career into something that's more of a passion project for them, because it's a time of life where they've got more space to gift themselves the time to actually think about what it is that's important to them. And then, maybe financially, if their children are a bit older, they've also got a bit more financial freedom to do some of these things as well.
Yeah, amazing. So there's just so many reasons why it's so important to acknowledge different milestones.
Yeah.
So, just acknowledging all of our stages in life, but really acknowledging these milestones, I think really helps just reground, reflect, and make conscious choices that are going to benefit our well-being and then obviously ripple effect to the well-being of those around us.
Yeah, absolutely. As my husband says, happy wife, happy life. So, if I'm happy, who can make me happy is me. It's no one else. So it took me a long time to learn that. But, absolutely. It ripples throughout, from my own experience, it ripples throughout my family, it ripples through my community because I hold space for women's circles and things as well. So allowing other women that opportunity to come together and giving them the space to pause and reflect and set where they're at and any intentions they want to set to move forward. So, connecting with other like-minded women, I called that in. It didn't just happen. I made that happen for myself. So I wanted to be around more like-minded women. So I created what I wanted, which was a women's circle. Yeah. And you need to spend some time and some space thinking about that sort of stuff to work out what it is that you truly want. So for me, it was connection that I desired. I wanted more deep connection with other women, and that's happened. Over the last few years, I've made some beautiful connections with women, which is really enriched my life. Yeah,
amazing. So I'm aware of time, but let's just quickly also just reflect back to that, what I asked you earlier, because we've looked at the different transitions and the different women at different stages. But now that this work is being done, I know it's been done for years and centuries in other parts of the world and other cultures, but in the Western world, now that we're starting to embrace this whole transition from a girl to a woman and around those times, do you think that it's we're going to see an effect on the type of older women or midlife women that we're going to have from these girls that are doing this work at that age?
how could you not? I think for sure, if you're a young girl who's been gifted self-worth, self-belief, self-confidence at a young age, and you're empowered to look after yourself, you know your own body, you know your own cycle, you trust in your own body, you're not disconnected from your own body, then, that's going to serve you well throughout your whole life. And, most of us haven't had that experience. Most of us didn't grow up like that, and we've had to create the change that we wanted. But I would love to think that the girls certainly who do a celebration day or have a mother that talks to them openly about this sort of stuff and creates that time and space to talk to each other about, some of these issues and models good self-care, it can only be of benefit for these girls growing up as they embrace those transitional points, if they choose to become mothers themselves, all that sort of stuff. It would have to benefit them through life.
Yeah, and I think that, having a good sense of self, a positive sense of self and good self-worth, and really feeling connected, like you said, to your own body, your own cycles, and just generally to yourself.
Yeah.
In your awareness, has a massive effect on your overall joy, overall well-being, and overall outlook in life.
Yeah.
For every single age. And you hope that if you're doing the work that young, because I know that, I did journal since I was a teenager. That was something that I just always did. I don't know that my journals at a really young age were all that deep. They might have been a little bit more of a storytelling situation, but they were as I progressed, they certainly did, cut through layers and really do a lot more exploration and gain insights and stuff like that. But I think that if we're doing this work, then hopefully, it'll be amazing. Like.
Yeah.
Girls that can go through and really celebrate these sort of transitions. And like you said before, it doesn't have to be in some woo-woo way. It can be in a really beautiful way that gets them, like we sort of talked a little bit about before off air, we talked a little bit about cycles and how the cycles themselves, even if they're not marked as again, this big sort of in a big spiritual way, but they're marked just as in reminding me that a month's gone past and I need to stop.
Yeah, absolutely.
And have a bit of a check-in with myself. Yeah. Even if they're used just for that purpose.
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
It's
Slow
like a
down.
natural way of we're given that opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and you have to create that because, but that's right. When those first few days of your cycle, slowing down, just saying no to some things, not exercising, pushing yourself through so much, just slowing everything down can support yourself so well. So teaching that to your daughter from a young age can be a really beneficial thing as well. But definitely journaling. Something I really advocate for mums and daughters to do is to have a shared journal that the girl keeps, and if she has any questions she wants to write to you or talk to you about but she doesn't want to say it out loud, she can write it in the journal and just leave it on your bed, and then you can write back to her and leave it on her bed, and that way you're communicating without talking, which can be a really nice way to communicate and talk about stuff as well. And I know through a retreat I did with mums and daughters, the big thing that teenage girls in particular want from their mums, they want to feel heard. So they just want to feel heard without mums talking at them, and they want quality one-on-one time. So just creating that time where our phones are, the phones are away. Could just be a check-in after school at the kitchen bench with a cup of tea, but actually just both checking in with each other and how you're doing is really powerful and a really simple, easy thing to start doing as well. Yeah,
and I think one of the key things you did say there was they just want to be heard, because I think that as women we're getting more skilled with each other of just holding that space and really just hearing each other. But I think when it's the mother-daughter relationship, sometimes, I know for me, sometimes I find it hard just to hold the space without advice.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not the same as when it's with a friend or with a client or with whatever or in a circle. Really giving them that time just to speak and not
And you'll hear much more if you do.
Yes. So, that's great advice. So, it's been brilliant. Like, I think we've covered quite a lot, looked at the different transitions, and I think that the real essence of all this is that, or the message that's really come out maybe for people is support is just so important. And support can look different to every person, but really getting in touch with yourself, knowing what your needs are to get that support. And obviously you do it really well with circles. For the older women to really act as role models or mentors. And if you don't have kids, maybe the auntie role, is a really important one.
Absolutely.
And the self-care. Self-care both, I love the idea of that self-care kit for that transition, but also just modelling self-care for yourself. Yeah. For the modelling purpose and also for your own well-being that you can actually have a full glass to be able to pour from.
Absolutely. Yeah, create your own self-kit as well, care kit as well. Absolutely. It's really a lovely thing to do for yourself as well, to have a box of beautiful things that are yours to nourish yourself when you need it.
Yeah, I love it. Now, before I let you go, there's a quote that I asked you, which was one of your favourite quotes, and I asked you what it was, and you said it to me, and I think it's a really good quote. So maybe you could read that out for the listeners.
Sure. It's the world's longest quote, so please bear with me, but it's from Benjamin Button, the movie, and it goes like this. For what it's worth, it's never too late, or in my case, too early, to be whoever you want to be. There's no time limit. Stop whenever you want. You can change or stay the same. There are no rules to this thing. We can make the best or the worst of it. I hope you make the best of it. And I hope you see things that startle you. I hope you feel things that you never felt before. I hope you meet people with a different point of view. I hope you live a life you're proud of. And if you find that you're not, I hope you have the strength to start all over again.
Yeah, such a good quote, and I think that it's really appropriate for no matter which stage of life you're at.
Absolutely. We can always start again.
Yeah. Tomorrow is a new day.
Absolutely.
So, thank you so much for your time and coming in and really talking about this idea of really embracing transitions for both girls and for women so that they can live the most wealthy life and connected life that they can. So, that's awesome. Yeah. So where can people find you and maybe information about the circles that you hold or the celebration days that you hold, or if they wanted to do some one-on-one work, where could they find you?
Yeah, sure. So my website is www.melissajeffcott.com, and I'm on Facebook. I've got 2 Facebook pages. The Other Side of 40 is from all my women's work, and I also have a Facebook page called Celebrating Girls where I put all my work for my teen and tween girl circles, and I'm also on Instagram at Mel Jeffcott, so you can connect with me at all those places.
Awesome. I'll put all of those details in the show notes as well, so if you didn't hear all of that and you don't remember it, just go back to the show notes. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm Lisa Entwistle, your host and founder of Wealthy Living. To find out a little bit more about my services, you can connect with me online at www.wealthyliving, living.com.au. I'm an integrated life, clarity and wellbeing coach. I do workplace wellness consulting, event facilitation and hosting. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a comment, provide any feedback. If you're listening on iTunes, you can rate the show or share with your network. So thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day, and thank you again, Mel, for coming in today.
My pleasure.